Welcome to the Wise and Happy Life podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern science and mindfulness, philosophy, and happiness practices blend with neuroscience, compassion, and common sense. Hosted by Bob Martin, meditation mentor, happiness coach, trial lawyer, and entrepreneur. This podcast explores how to live with grace, presence, and purpose in a complex world.
Hey, hello, good people, and welcome to another episode of A Wise and Happy Life. And as you all know, I always like to start out these podcasts by setting the theme, saying a little bit about what this podcast is going to feel like. And it reminds me, I want to tell you a little story about some time ago, which I really don't remember when it was, but it was many, many years ago. I'm saying probably in the 80s. And I was with my wife, and we attended this church service at one of a Unity church, which is kind of a fringe Christian type of church, kind of like Unitarian. I don't know if fringe is the right word, but not mainline, let's put it that way. And I was upset about something when I arrived. And there was a lady there that I came to know and to like a lot. And I went up and I started to express, my frustration and upset with whatever it was. That I don't remember. But I do remember that she bowled me over with her response because it was just immediate, it was spontaneous, and it was kind. Mm-hmm. And after the service, I said to my wife, she always has a different way of looking at things. And my wife just put it very easily. Well, she's just a kind person. And sometimes you run into people like that and you remember them and they make a big impact on your life because they become your models. And so I tell you this story because we have a wonderful human being in the studio with us today, Kay Duren. And she is a kind person. She's one of those folks who you meet her and immediately you just want to have her in your world. So Kay, with that introduction, I'm going to start out by asking you a kind of funny question.
Okay.
And that question is, do you ever get angry or frustrated?
All the time. And I cuss a lot, especially when I drop things on the floor.
So you really are a kind person, and it's not just what you say and how you react to something, but you have this energy about you that's just gentle and kind. And I'm guessing, and I'm pretty sure that life wasn't or you weren't always like that. So how did you get to where you are?
It's been a journey of 81 years, Bob. And you're right. I've had the low times and the high times, and all of them have made me who I am today. And I'm learning to embrace those things that we call the painful times because they are great teachers. They may be our greatest teacher. We can be grateful for acts of kindness like you experienced at the Unity Church, but they're also bigger than that. The negative experiences I'm talking about, because we have to unpack them. We have to really be present to them. We have to really look them in the eye and allow them their space and allow them to speak to us about what they mean for our journey. And I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've had some really lousy jobs and I've had some really wonderful ones. And the most wonderful one was when I was a hospice chaplain, which is how I ended my career. And there's something very precious about death and awareness of death. I was introduced to death and dying in 1973 when I heard Elizabeth Kubler-Ross speak in person. And I was mesmerized and on the edge of my seat. And I started following this woman who also had a very hard life. And things like she created an AIDS hospice for infants in North Carolina. And the neighbors responded by burning it down. She lost all of the papers. And yet she remained resilient to be able to continue to lecture and to share about death and dying. And
wow.
Yeah. I followed her to Southern California, where she created a center. And then I never met the lady. I never got to go to her center, but I saw it. I was always in pursuit of the comprehension of death and dying. And yet, when my husband died, which is 12 years ago now, I had to be so busy fixing up the house because he was a theater organ enthusiast and it was built into the house. And when that went, everything had to be repaired. So I never grieved. And all my knowledge about death and dying didn't allow me to understand grief as a beautiful journey. And then my dog died, and the dog is who led me into grief study and comprehension. And I know it softened me greatly, just like my new aortic valve has softened me greatly.
Is that because, wow, so you've had a new valve put into your heart, and you say that softened you. My wife just found out that she has a low pumping pressure. And they discovered it's probably the result of a left bundle block that she got from cancer some time ago. And we had a conversation around that. She was upset about it and couldn't name it until we decided and named it as grief. And so, is that what you're saying when you say it softened you? You came to terms with that vulnerability of your own physical vulnerability?
Well, to use your example of Connie's aortic or her heart problem, I was counseling with a woman I don't know because her husband died, and then she entered cancer therapy treatment. And she gave the drug she was taking cute names. So I felt she was very resilient and she could handle, but I knew she wasn't grieving for her husband also because she was in the midst of this therapy. And in communicating with her, I suggested when her treatment was over that now she could begin grieving for her husband because she had completed grieving for her body. And so grief is a wonderful word that you came to with Connie's heart problem, because it's what invites us to grow. And I think I mentioned to you that I named my heart valve Joy. And Joy stands for just open yourself. And I thought what a gift it was, because when I named my valve, I realized that the valve had opened my heart, my aorta specifically. And then I became aware that I was softer, I was gentler, I was more mentally focused. I had more energy, to be sure, but also spiritually, I was more open, just generally speaking. And I found it very fascinating. And I'm so grateful to my little dog who introduced me to grief. And I'm writing a book now on grief.
Oh, sweet. I'd like to just kind of unpack that for a minute. The choice of facing the loss by embracing grief is a choice.
Yes.
There are alternatives. I mean, how many folks have we run across that have never either grieved or were unable to see their grief as something to embrace? And that doesn't lead to very much happiness. So I guess my question is the ability to actually choose to embrace something which other people see as difficult. Is it a skill? Is it a wisdom? Is it a knowledge? I mean, we say that it's a choice, but I guess what I'm getting to is it's not really a choice if you don't have the ability to do it.
Correct. I see it as a gift.
Go ahead.
I just see it as a gift. And when I described my husband's passing and my having to get busy, that's one of the most common things that people do to avoid looking at grief internally, because it's an inside job. And it requires a lot of attention. It requires energy. And all I could do was receive. I received the gift. And not everybody sees grief as a gift. They resist. There's profound resistance when it happens. And I think there are things I'm still grieving. I'm just the day after the woman I told you about, the day after I've suggested that she was grieving her body because of the cancer diagnosis, the very next day I found out there's a whole book written on body grief. Hello? I mean, this grief thing keeps evolving and opening up and broadening my horizons all the time. I've come to see some of my bad job choices in terms of grief of employment, grief of a miserable working condition, and what it's like to have to show up on an everyday basis in some place that really is not aware of your humanity. They're just interested in the bottom line. That's a grief. And how do we wrestle with it? How do we face it? Those are the invitations that life offers us to make a choice, to see grief as a gift.
You know, when you say that one of the common ways of dealing with gift is to get active and to get busy and things like that, it occurs to me that that's not just out of the loss of something, but it's also, maybe it is a loss, because I'm thinking of maybe somebody that comes out of a childhood that was less than satisfactory and is carrying around a lot of thoughts that I'm not good enough, I'm not anything, something, fill in the blank, I'm not filling the blank enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have very busy lives and they keep busy all the time as a way of avoiding having to think about that. Is that a grief?
Absolutely. Yes. I had a wonderful childhood in some ways, and I also had a fractured childhood. So and I still continue to learn about what it is to be reliving, because we do relive through memories, the experiences that I had as a child that were damaging, but still helped to make me who I am today. And so I don't want to skip over it. I want to let it teach me what it's come to teach me. And hope that when I come to the end of my days, which are sooner rather than longer, that I will have the gift of graciousness to be able to say thank you for whatever life has brought.
And still, I ask that so many folks could not take the lessons that you've taken. Do you think that there was something that was foundational, or do you think it's genetic, that you could accept, these learning opportunities, as you call them, with such grace?
I have to go back to it's a gift, and I'm not trying to diminish the work I've done to get here, because it's taken a lot of work. It's taken a lot of studies. One thing leads to another, to another, to another. Every 10 years, my life collapsed and I cashed in my IRA and went and got another degree. And, my first one was in healthcare administration. So I was a hospital administrator. And then I had a bad experience and I went and got a degree in formative spirituality, which is rooted in phenomenological psychology. I can't say that I understand phenomenological psychology, but it was part of what formed me. I had to learn how to say it. It's a complicated word. And then 10 years later, my life collapsed again. And in the meantime, I had read Matthew Fox's book, A Spirituality Named Compassion. And I want to tell you a story from that book, because Matt always begins his books with derivatives. What is the etymology of any given word? That's really important. So compassion, he tells us, comes from the Hebrew meaning womb. And I'm reading this in Nigeria, where I've gone to volunteer in a leper hospital, and I'm under my own tree and all the lepers are under the other tree. And by the way, that's what they call themselves. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm reading, these people are illiterate. They don't even understand what it is to sit with a book. So my job was to close the book and go and join them and sit under the tree with them. Never mind that I didn't speak their language. I just had to, the act of compassion the womb is the nurturing place, right? So when you see another person suffering and you let it into your life at such a depth that you feel it in your womb or in your nurturing place, then you have to take action. So compassion is actually an action word, and a lot of people never get there. They stop at pity and they let it go. And I'm so grateful. But having read Matt's book when I came back to the States and my life was still unraveled, I got a job as a hospital administrator for a few years. And then I said, I'm going to go study with Matt Fox. So I did, and it changed my life. He introduced me to so many things that I had never even considered, like Buddhism, like Native American, indigenous, tribal thinking, like cosmic consciousness, like quantum physics. I mean, it's just, the list goes on. But he cracked me wide open, and that's when I went and became a chaplain.
You mentioned that he told a story in his book
about compassion.
You want to share that with us?
That was the story.
The story about sitting with the lepers.
No, that was my story. But he told the etymology of the word that sparked me to realize that I was reading in the face of a people who don't read anything. They couldn't comprehend what I was doing. And it was more important for me to go and be with the lepers. And I had no clinical skills. I couldn't do nurse. I couldn't do pharmacy. I couldn't do those kinds of things, which is why I took the book to clinic. So I could catch up on the book. But it changed my life, and I'm grateful for it. So how do I get here? I don't know, Bob. I've always been interested in spirit. When I went to Egypt, I had what kind of a mystical experience inside the Sphinx. I mean, the pyramid, the Great Pyramid. In order to get in there, you have to bend over because it's not a large tunnel height-wise. And so you go into this room, it's a chamber, and they turn the lights out, and there's nothing as dark as the darkness inside the pyramid. And when I stood up after the lights were turned back on, I had what I perceived to be an electrical impulse that allowed me to see myself as one with the stars. And so the stars had come into the inside of the pyramid, into me. And I discovered my cosmic self, I guess you could say.
Those experiences, and I think I know what you're speaking about because I've shared one. For me, it was doing a body scan one morning, guided. I was at a silent retreat. We had been silent for 3 days, and I think to have those experiences, that there has to be an unusual setting that you're in. But we were silent for 3 days, and we were doing a body scan, laying on a mat, and sensing and feeling the body sensations in different parts of my body, and then all of a sudden, I had this sensation that I was completely empty inside, that all the organs were gone, the bones were gone, everything was gone. But yet, it sounds weird when you describe it, but it begs the words. But my skin, I still felt that my sack of skin was there, and then all of a sudden, it felt filled with something. And you say an electrical charge. I say it was an electrical charge. It was an electrical fog for me, with energy, and it filled me, and it stayed for a moment, and then it left, and I've never been the same.
No, I get it. I really do. These indefinable experiences that we know we're different because of them.
And, I think that you say these, and sometimes people hear it and they go, that's pretty woo-woo. And it's a little bit odd. But, I think that everybody has these experiences. It's just that you need to be in a place where you can accept it as something spiritual. I mean, who hasn't been lost in a sunset, for just that moment? And
exactly.
So,
yeah. No, I thank you for sharing your experience. That is quite phenomenal. You just use that word,
Uh-huh.
really, because you can own that it changed you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the evolution begins. It's when we can take ownership of these unusual experiences, whether they're the kind that you and I had, or whether they're grief or pain or disability. I'm also grieving my body because I can't walk, and I'm terribly imbalanced. And so my doctors agreed to provide me with physical therapy for balance. They have specific instructions for balance. So I start next month. So maybe I'll be able to walk in the end. My legs still work, but I can't. I always have to hold on to something. And it limits.
Go ahead.
Well, just to say, it limits what I do. Like in the kitchen, I have to do everything sitting down, and the counters are too high. I can't see into the pot on the stove. I wash the dishes, and the water sprays my glasses, and that's a frustration. I'm cleaning my glasses to be very difficult.
I was just speaking with one of my students, and she is wrapped up in the desire to be living a life where she has no frustrations and everything is joyful. And and so we're working on that. And she says, I just want to get to a point where I can handle everything. So I said to her, well, you never will. And she looked at me like, why are you saying that? I said, no, you never will, but your annoyances will get more granular. Right? So at one point, your annoyances was your life collapsing on you and having to cash in your IRA and going back to school.
Right.
And today, your annoyances are water splashing on your glasses. Right. I would say that's more granular.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly, for sure. Another thing.
And isn't it wonderful we can laugh about it?
Oh, and that's where the joy comes. And, because I've named my valve joy goes with me wherever I go. Even if I'm in a funky mood, joy is still there. And she's still drawing me out. And I think of her as a feminine presence, but that's my bias. And I'm a late life feminist, thanks to Matthew Fox, as a matter of fact, because I was the firstborn son in my family. I didn't know from feminism, I had a friend over yesterday, and she had heard Elizabeth Kubler-Ross speak too, and was mesmerized by her. And she was only 7 years old when she heard her. And still this woman was so captivating. And it was just fun to be able to share old lady healing stories. We've turned into our mothers when we're talking about all these illnesses of old age. We laughed at ourselves. Laughter is so healing too,
It's true. I don't know that there's any way to get to where you are without going through the obstacles and, the ups and the downs of life and the like. But, how can we share this, with, look, let's face it. If we were in a tribal situation, you would be an elder.
Yes.
You would sit in the council of elders. Not every one of your age would be on the council of elders, but I believe you would be.
Thank you.
And then, the youngins would come in with whatever obstacles they have to talk to the council. They would bring in their marital issue or their issue with their chores or whatever. And you would sit and give them advice. But how can you advise them on wisdom?
I don't know. And yet I've secured a domain name because I think if I'm going to write a book and publish it, I'm going to have some place to hang my hat out there in the internet world. And my name is wiseelder.net.
Wiseelder. Beautiful. That's beautiful. I really like that. That's great.
I haven't done a thing for it except to pay for it, and so it works. Nothing for me to get my stuff together.
Well, let me share something that I just discovered with you and for you in the audience as well, all the would-be authors that may be out there. there is a startup authors website group that for very, very reasonable amount, it's like $95 a year.
Mm-hmm.
They will give you a pre-made website specifically designed for authors,
Interesting.
where
Yeah.
you can put your books and your writings and the links to wherever people can buy them,
Mhm.
and you can write about you and everything else. I'll put the link to that in the show notes.
Thank you.
And I'll make sure that you get, I
Yes.
send it to you. But I have signed up, and
Mhm.
I am very, very happy with it. It gives you everything that you need for an author's website at a very reasonable price.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Bob. And
You're
the
welcome.
audience, I'm sure, appreciates that too.
Yeah. And, I want to, we're talking about wisdom. I want to mention something else. I had another lady on the podcast recently. Her name is Faith Spencer.
Mhm.
And she is in her mid 30s, mid to late 30s, and she has a Gen Z daughter. And as the daughter was growing up, she was noticing that there isn't generally speaking, there's a lot that folks in our generation were exposed to that kids today just aren't exposed to, because the methods of teaching are different. The amount of writing they do with their hands is different, and the like. And so she wanted to expose her daughter to some thinkings. And so she decided she would write a book. And so we were talking about it, and I became interested in her book. And we made kind of a deal. I tell you what, you buy my book, I'll buy your book, and we'll take a look at it. So I just did it on that basis, but I got her book, and I've been reading it. I'm so impressed with it. She did such a good job. This is her book. I don't know if you can see. It's called The
Oneness Guide for Today.
The Oneness Guide for Today, a book of insight for young women.
Uh-huh.
And it is really, really excellent. It's the kind of stuff that you would want your daughter to know.
Is it written for the daughter's age? Is it written for?
Yeah, it's written for Gen Zs and people,
Yes.
I'd say, late teens to early college, is written. And it has a discussion. It's got a lot of cool little quotes all over it. And at the end, there's always a reflection and some journaling prompts. And I'm really proud. I'm going to buy a few of these and give them away to my granddaughters and
Sounds like holiday gifting for young women. Yes,
holiday gifting for young women.
Right.
So, but going back to growing up, you went through. Again, how do you account for the resilience?
I think having negative experiences is what leads to resilience. Plus, I think, and I mentioned this to you in a previous conversation, I happen to be Polish on my father's side by heritage and Irish on my mother's side by heritage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I bring a lot of cultural strength. I don't understand ancestor stuff. That I appreciate it. I respect it a lot. And the African-American community certainly has informed my thinking about ancestors and their importance in our lives. But I really do believe that both of my paternal grandfather was an immigrant around the turn of the 1900s century, coming from Poland. And it was my Irish great-grandfather who was the immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather graduated from Cornell in 1912. And college was a real luxury back then. And Cornell, of course, was a very astute school. And he married my grandmother, and they got on a train and went to California and got on a boat and went to China. And my mother was born in China, and all the girls were born in China. And my mother graduated from high school in China. And what an interesting influence that is. And then when the Japanese invaded Manchuria, the State Department ordered American citizens to return to this country. So my grandfather was sitting on the Shanghai City Council, didn't feel that he wanted to leave until his term was up. So my grandmother took the girls to Germany, of all places, in 1936. And they got into some political fear for my grandmother because they were outspoken, as Americans tend to be. And so she took them to Italy. As a result, all of these girls became multilingual. So that's not my story, but it's in my heritage. That kind of resilience, that kind of cultural sensitivity is part of who I am. So my grandfather fought hard. My father grew up in poverty, and he went to medical school. And he was always fascinated that his father was able to provide medical school for him when he was a piano teacher. I mean, humble beginnings that lead to career changes or career adjustments. And it's just fascinating when that's all I know of my family history, except in a meditation one day, I saw my ancestors sitting around a lake and a fire, of course. And I realized that I am the result of their dreams, that I am the fulfillment of my ancestors' dreams in my enfleshment. And so I'm filled with gratitude for that. And I don't know why I became, David Sendell Ross helped me with gratitude too. I've been following him for years and try to live a grateful life. I'm not disciplined about it. I don't get up every morning and say, thank you, I'm glad for this day necessarily, although I am. I just don't always acknowledge it. But all of that has made me who I am today. And I thank you for your kind words about me being kind. That really touches my heart. And now you've introduced me as a wise woman, and I value that very highly too. So,
well, it just comes through. But you talk about the ancestors. I wrote a poem once. I'm Mudyar, and the Mudyars were the brothers to the Huns. Actually, Hunnis and Mudyar were brothers, and Hunnis went off to rob and pillage in Europe. And Mudyar said, well, if you find a good place for me to come settle, please let me know. And he discovered this beautiful valley by the Danube. He sent a message back to his brother who came and settled there. So I wrote a poem once called Mudyar, which for those it's spelled Magyer, so people can recognize the word as the ancient Hungarians. And one of the lines of that poem was a period on a 6th century sentence. So you are a period.
Yes.
But maybe not a period, maybe just a comma.
Maybe a comma. I have no children, though. And yet one of the things, just last week, I was listening to a seminar, and one of the women said, even if you have no children, you're an ancestor. And I'm pondering that. What does that mean? Because we think of our heritage as being the children that we leave behind and the grandchildren. But now I'm told I'm also an ancestor.
I think so, because one of the logos of my church, the United Church of Christ, is a comma. And the saying, is that God is still speaking. Whereas so many people see the Bible as a period. That's the end of the story. But the story continues. But since you bring this up, it begs a question again from me about something I've been thinking about lately, and I think have all heard the term generational trauma.
Yes,
especially as it applies to marginalized folks. And matter of fact, I in my courses I teach. I have a exercise where we actually experience some of the history of structural racism. And there's a little video in there about generational trauma. And we can certainly understand that when a people are traumatized, then, the generations that follow are going to feel that and sense that. And I was thinking about that the other day. And I was also thinking that some of the meanness that is being promulgated these days. I I mean, whatever your politics may be, I think that we all have to admit that there are some people that are in uniform, that are acting in ways that are pretty mean.
Right.
And there is a certain rhetoric that is present in politics and the culture today that's just mean. It is. And I was trying to wrap my head around how people can be that way. How can they be mean? Certainly, they're not. You look at people that are mean and greedy, and you can't say that they're happy people. And so why would you choose not to be happy and like that? And it occurred to me that when we say generational trauma, we don't think about being understanding of generational traumatizing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, if there were folks that were traumatized, there were traumatizers. And if that is so, then that action, that those acts of meanness and the teachings that lead to a worldview where you can be mean can also be passed down generationally. And
I think you're something.
does that give me rise to any compassion? And to tell you the truth, it's still hard for me to generate compassion around folks that are mean, but I think that this is an opening anyway. What do you think of all that?
Well, I think you're spot on. And I too have been reflecting on how is it possible for so-called ordinary people to be so mean, as, for example, the ICE agents are evidencing now, or at least that's what the media is telling us is going on. And I have no reason to disbelieve that. But how did these people come to be able to do that? How do they have the capacity? So you may be right in naming intergenerational trauma. I also observed that the vast majority of them happen to be white. And so there's this overlay of racism. Maybe it's a reverse racism, the superiority thing like the Germans dealt with in World War II. But I don't understand how it's possible to be that mean either. And I just share your conundrum. And the quest for, but the truth is every one of us is wounded, Bob. Every one of us has wounds. And so the people who are able to do this are acting out their own woundedness without looking into it, without evaluating it, without incorporating it, without allowing recognition that it's helped them to become who they are, whether it came from their ancestors a generation ago, 2 generations ago, or whether it's been created in their own lifetime. There's still a wound that needs to be healed.
You know, and that kind of like leads to to a conversation. If anybody hears that, not if anybody, if many people hear that, their immediate response is, well, how can you be putting that forward? These people need to be held accountable. They need to be responsible for their actions and the like. And they kind of conflate the idea of having compassion for somebody with feeling that you have to accommodate their behavior. You know, I'm not same as in forgiveness. As in forgiveness, I can forgive somebody, but that doesn't mean that I don't hold them accountable for their action.
Right, of course. And I'm not saying that either. I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Accountability is missing a lot of lives right now. And sometimes in mine, why do I cuss so much when I drop things on the floor? Because it's hard for me to bend over. And so I'm having a reaction rather than a response. A response would be, oh, gee, now I've got more work to do. But a reaction is to use a cuss word. And so,
well, hey, hold on, time out on that one. I hereby grant you permission to curse all you want when you drop.
Permission received.
Been there, done that, right?
Right. But the truth is, we can only participate in our own healing, and as best we can, then share it with others. And usually it's others who share a same kind of wound with us. So I don't have the wound of needing to brutalize other people. So I'm not a likely healer in that regard. But it doesn't mean I can't have compassion for the victims as well as the perpetrators. It's a different kind of compassion, but I can still have it. And and that's when I'm able just to offer that, well, if it's just a simple bless them, I'm offering that to the universe to let the universe handle what is bigger than anything you or I can do. I don't disagree with you about accountability, by the way.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's, I think there's the Christian expression, let go and let God. Right. And, and that whole idea of, it's not our job to judge others. Right. Although it's hard not to.
I had a recent conversation with friends who have become biblical fundamentalists, and they took me to dinner for my birthday, and I had just been listening to a 2-hour conversation with a woman who was dying. And at that point, she hadn't yet died, but she has now. And she was asked about the next life, speaking of Christian. And she said, I think the next life will be without judgment. And I went, hallelujah. That is so fine. That's worth moving toward. Bring it on, so to speak. And so I offered that at dinner, and the husband says to me, well, God judges. And I immediately got defensive internally, because I don't speak Bible well enough to have that conversation at that level. But I came home and I Googled God as judge. And what came up was Deuteronomy. And what does God judge? But God judges the heart. And so much of my life revolves around the heart now. So it's a trigger word because of my aortic valve that I come back to over and over and over again. So where is the heart in the issue that's too big for us to handle? But we are so clearly a part of it, even if it's only as a witness.
Bearing witness.
And that's what's essential when someone is dying, is that they die knowing that their lives are witness, that they are who they are, and they have to surrender and let go. And the body knows how to shut down, and families always want to feed the body, and it's bad medicine because the body doesn't need to be fed when it's shutting down. But people don't get that, because feeding is our way of nurturing in our culture, and that's what we know best. And so if you're starving mom or starving dad, you're doing a wrong thing, according to people who don't understand that the body is letting go. The body doesn't need to be fed.
Yeah. We have a friend whose wife died several years ago, and he's been, it just changed him. He was never the same after. He's been grieving. I don't even know if you call this grieving. I mean, he's just been depressed deeply, and cannot accommodate it. And so he has decided to take his own life. He's going to do it by fasting, water and food. And, when we all heard about that, it was all kinds of, questions like, can he take a pill, or can he get treated, or is there something that we can do? And then the biggest question, why would he do it like that, which is really quite painful and uncomfortable. But after we, appeased our own questioning, we said, well, it's his decision. That's what he's going to do. And everybody has, grouped around to support him and to help him and to spend time with him and be with him and help to relieve his suffering as he does this. But it's still hard to wrap your head around.
Sure it is. I had a patient one time who made that choice, and she was Lutheran by background, and the last meal she wanted it to be Holy Communion. So I was privileged to be able to deliver that to her and share that with her husband. And then her journey into this, it's a very respectable way to let go of life. Stop eating and think.
Do you find that your connection with death has affected your perception of life?
Oh, yes. All a part of us. It's a seamless fabric. Life and death, they go together like peanut butter and jelly. It's all. Yeah. Right. I can't receive the gift of death without also receiving the gift of life. And so how do I live life to the fullest, knowing that I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning? And in fact, before it was discovered I needed this heart surgery, I was frankly giving up. I was aware that I was winding down. I was letting go. And now look at me. 4 months later, I'm beginning to write a book. I'm talking to you. I'm still a viable life force. And yet that is just around the corner.
Just around the corner. You know, have you ever heard of the Buddhist practice of the churling fields?
Churling, no. I've heard of Bardo, but not churling.
The churling fields are at the edge of town where they throw the bodies to dispose of bodies. They're not buried. There's just so many, and they're not buried. They're thrown out there simply to rot and decay. Mm-hmm. And the monks are sent out there to sit for 3 days among the smell and the rats and the snakes and decaying bodies, simply to embody deeply, I would imagine, deeply embody the idea that life is transitory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I was watching some of Ken Burns' documentary on the Revolutionary War last night, which is such a finely done piece. And I'm way behind in my viewing of it, but it's all the bodies lying around. And I'm wondering, what do they do with those bodies? I mean, who comes in and cleans up and buries them and takes care of them? And so churling is another option. And those monks went and bore witness to the humanity that they were leaving behind. Yes, that's beautiful.
Yeah. There is something that's deeply painful. There's a Zen group that bears witness, and they have an annual trip to Dachau, where they just simply go and bear witness. They also have a program over by you, the West Coast, of witnessing the suffering of the homeless, and they actually will help people become homeless for a week as a practice, to just bear witness, bear witness, and also to understand what that life is.
It's a life altering. I have not had that experience, but it's a beautiful gift that they're giving to humanity just by allowing themselves to be impacted that way. I went to Auschwitz one time, and while I was there, my tooth broke, and I was able to claim the piece of the tooth that broke. And I got a little sidetracked by getting into the Polish healthcare system, which was kind of an interesting piece. And I didn't have any pain, so I didn't have to deal with the tooth till I came back to the United States. But because I was at Auschwitz, I wanted to go back to Auschwitz and leave my tooth there in solidarity with those who had lost their lives.
It is a deep pain to open yourself up to those things, and yet it's a sweet pain, no?
Oh yeah, yeah,
and yeah. I mean, to anybody listening, that's got to sound terribly strange.
Okay, that's fine. They're entitled to their opinions, and as I've gotten older, I've become less dependent on other people's opinions, even as I value you having labeled me as kind and elder. So.
Yes. No, but I mean the idea of how do you account for the sweetness of the pain of opening yourself and being vulnerable to such deep suffering of others? You know, I know people that say, well, I can't even watch the news because the moment I start thinking about Gaza or something, I just can't handle it. I just can't. And they have this, their shields protecting their sense of vulnerability up. And how do you see that?
It's a life's call, and you hear it or you don't. And there's no judgment if you don't. But if you hear it, you know you're going to let that experience change you somehow, some way. And a lot of times I think of it as deepening. I'm changed because I'm a deeper person. I'm a softer person than I used to be. And all I could say is yes. And isn't that what joy is about? Saying yes. Open yourself and say yes.
So I want to go back to something that you said because it keeps going around in my mind.
Okay.
So for you, the physical sensation of compassion, I mean, and again, I just mentioned it. Normally when we say compassion, we think of it as an intellectual or an emotion, and don't often think of it as a physical sensation.
Mhm.
But you say that you feel that physical sensation in your womb.
Which I no longer have. But nonetheless, the capacity to give life is given to every one of us. And yeah, only women have wombs, but I tell you what, men have that place within them too. And I've been following a lady recently, Suzanne Giesman, and she's just discovered the hara. And she believed that everything was mental or heart. And then she finds out that there's much more depth to be found in the gut, in the hara zone. And so now she's doing her work based on grounding itself in the hara, which is just fascinating to me because this is language I don't speak, but I'm open to it, and I'm open to exploring what implications it might have for me. And I think that's the gift I bring to the world, is being willing to be able to be open to some strange stuff, what seems to be strange stuff.
That's right. It seems to be strange stuff. Because I grew up in a non-religious family and then was introduced for the first time to any kind of system of virtue through Taoism, the sister of Buddhism, and then Buddhism. And then I married my wife, who is a Bible literalist, a recovering Southern Baptist. And she just thought all my stuff was weird and I couldn't buy her science. And so we had we met on values and our sense of compassion for the world, but we expressed it in such different intellectual terms.
Yes.
Until finally, we came to understand each other much better.
That's a terrific journey. And by the way, there's a lot of evidence that shows that the importance of bodily sensations, the somatic experience of life, has not been delivered to many of us. I didn't grow up with a body. I was an intellectual. I was a head, So now I've moved toward my heart in through my life experiences, and now I'm discovering that my guts have something to offer too. And I know that the doorway to healing grief is by feeling our feelings and letting the feelings take us to where we need to go. And we feel our feelings in our body. But if we don't have a body awareness, we can't make that connection. And that's the connection I'm working on now.
Right. Well, in teaching meditation, we start with, of course, breath awareness, which is a body sensation. Right. But later on, getting into body scans, where we actually spend the time to pay attention to the physical sensations in our body. And sometimes my students say, why is this so important? And the explanation, of course, is that your emotions are a combination of a thought that you have and a body sensation that you're having. Because if I were to say, I love you, Kay, and I didn't have a body sense, I didn't have a feeling. For me, my sense of compassion is like an arm is stretching out from the middle of my chest. That's the image that I get. If I didn't have some kind of feeling connected with that, it would just be an intellectual statement. On the other hand, if I had the feeling that would normally be accompanied with love, but I didn't have a thought, I'd probably think that I had indigestion. So once you get it, that an emotion is, a combination of a body sensation and a thought, then for those emotions that are helpful, you can allow them. But for those that are not helpful, you can begin to deconstruct it, by simply saying, what is the body sensation? What's the thought? And, separate those two things. And you find that it's it helps with emotional regulation.
Absolutely. And I'm bringing gratitude to bowel movements. And
I've had gratitude for my bowel movements for a long time, let me tell you.
But I'm consciously choosing to say, thanks, your body, for helping me let go.
Yeah. Well, that's a really great place to wrap this up. Uh, so, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but again, going back to that place where you're sitting in the circle as a as a as a tribal elder, is
Mhm.
there anything that you can pass on?
Yes, and it's not mine, but I love it so much it deserves to be shared. Again, another woman I heard speak at a conference. Angeles Arian is her name. She's a cultural anthropologist. And she said the 4 rules of life are: show up, pay attention, tell the truth, and don't get attached to the results. Now,
Wow.
when I heard those 4 statements, I thought the most significant of them was don't get attached to the results. But I've come to appreciate that sometimes the gift is in showing up. If I don't show up, I can't pay attention. I can't speak truth. I can't do any of the other things. So showing up sometimes takes every bit of energy I have to be there in that moment, whatever that is. So show up would be my bottom line.
Yep. I can't tell you that maps on so perfectly to a piece of wisdom that my father gave me.
Ah.
He was teaching me how to play tennis, and he was beating the crap out of me. And one time, I tried to lob the ball over his. I'm only 12 or 14 years old, something like that, and he got it, and he slammed it. And I just got so upset and so frustrated. I said, "You've been playing this so much longer. You're so much older. You're so much bigger. Blah 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 blah." And you just never let me win, and then I'm going on and on like that.
Mhm.
Finally, he lets me, rant. And then he says, look, if I let you win, would you appreciate it? And he said, well, okay, no. And he said, no, let me tell you how you play. This is how you play. He said, you play every single point like your life depends on it.
Mhm.
And at the end of the game, you look up at the result and you shrug your shoulders and you go on to the next game.
Right.
Play it hard, but
Yeah.
don't be attached to the result.
Right. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and I've come up with this little what would you would call it, anagram called grace. I
Oh,
think you'll like this.
yeah.
The G is for generosity and gratitude.
Oh, it's a double G.
That's a double G. Okay. The R is for reflection.
Okay.
The A is for awareness.
Mm-hmm.
The C is for compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And the E is for engagement.
Sounds like, because it ends with action.
It ends with action.
If we don't take action, we've done nothing really, except maybe allowed ourselves to change somehow in the process. And one day we will be active.
Yes, you have to engage. And just end up, I want to tell you and tell the audience also that I am creating a community. You and I are both members of the hostee community,
Right.
which we find very supportive and very helpful. And so kind of modeling it on that, I decided to start a new community as well for providers, where people can come and say, here's nutrition, here's a yoga teacher, here's a meditation teacher, and we could all be part of this community. And it's going to be called the 5L Collective. And the L's stand for listen, show up, right? Listen, learn, live, love, but the last one, again, lead.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is all about taking it and giving it back.
That's wonderful. And you're doing that. And
yeah, we're I think it'll launch probably in the beginning of the year.
And so am I doing it in my own funny little way.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
And thank you for
And
that acknowledgement.
Well, Kay, I thank you so much for your time and your wisdom in coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know that we could probably speak for hours, but
Life calls.
time,
The laundry waits.
The laundry waits. You know that old story about the master, see, we could talk forever. The student who keeps coming to the teacher saying that he's enlightened, and the teacher doesn't buy it and tells him to go back and study more until he finally does seem like he's enlightened. And teacher says, yes, I think you're there. And he says, well, what now? And the teacher says, the laundry.
There you go. I had not heard that version of it, but yes, practical realities do arise. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Bob.
Thank you. And I'll see you on the other side.
Okay, I love that.